I've loved 7 famous women. Each one is a wound. I don't regret loving them, but I regret trusting them.
When you picture Angie Dickinson, you probably think of elegance, cool composure, and someone totally unshakable. For decades, she was the definition of Hollywood glamour, a thinking man's bombshell who could go toe-to-toe with giants like John Wayne and Frank Sinatra. But for years, a whisper has followed her, an urban legend tucked away in the dark corners of Hollywood lore. The legend speaks of a secret list, supposedly holding the names of 7 actresses she secretly couldn't stand. Beneath the shine of Hollywood's golden era lies a history of heartbreak, betrayal, and tragedy that could outdo any movie script. Today, we're not just repeating the legend, we're looking at why it even exists. We'll explore the feuds, the rivalries, and the painful truths the golden age of cinema tried to keep hidden. Is the list real? Or is it just a symptom of an industry that has always loved to pit its most brilliant women against each other? The truth, as we're about to find out, is way more complex and shocking than the rumor itself. We're going to separate fact from fiction to understand the world Angie Dickinson survived and the very real pressures that could make professional competition look a lot like hate. So let's be clear right up front. The idea that Angie Dickinson has a secret hate list isn't backed up by any real evidence. It's a bit of sensationalized gossip. But the reason a myth like this could catch on? That's where the real story is. It's a story of manufactured rivalries, a brutal studio system that micromanaged every part of a star's life, and the very human conflicts that grew under all that pressure. The names on this rumored list aren't just random. Each one represents a different side of the Hollywood machine Dickinson had to fight. As we go through this so-called list, we aren't just debunking a myth. We are uncovering the hidden truths of what it really took to be a woman in Hollywood's most unforgiving era. Coming in at number 7 on this legendary and likely imaginary list is maybe the most iconic actress of the 20th century, Marilyn Monroe. The story goes that the bad blood between Dickinson and Monroe started over a man, the most powerful man in the world, President John F. Kennedy. It's a juicy story, the exact kind of explosive love triangle Hollywood gossip is built on. 2 of the era's most famous blonde bombshells fighting for a charismatic president. The narrative is perfect, but it's almost entirely made up. While whispers of an affair between Dickinson and JFK have popped up over the years, Angie herself has been crystal clear in her denials. In a 2019 interview with CBS News, when asked point-blank if she had an affair with the president, her answer was a blunt no. She confirmed she campaigned for him, but said there was no reason to believe they were seeing each other, because they simply weren't. The story seems to have been born from her being in the right place at the wrong time. She was part of the Rat Pack's social circle, which put her in the orbit of both Sinatra and JFK, making her an easy target for speculation. So, if there was no affair, where did the rumor of hating Marilyn come from? It came directly from the Hollywood system. In the 50s and 60s, studios built their stars on archetypes. Both Dickinson and Monroe were poured into the blonde bombshell mold, and the media has always loved a good catfight between women in the same lane. Dickinson even acknowledged the weight of Monroe's image, once saying, "She was known as the greatest, rightly so, sex symbol of all time. Boy, try to do Shakespeare after that." That doesn't sound like hate. It sounds like a professional recognizing the box that image could put an actress in. Dickinson recalled meeting Monroe twice, once in a restaurant ladies' room where she complimented Marilyn on her figure. She described Monroe as sweet and gracious, and was stunned by her beauty and fragility. That's hardly the way you'd talk about a bitter rival. The truth behind this feud isn't personal dislike, but an industry that treated women like products to be compared. The studios created these phantom rivalries to gin up press. They couldn't imagine two powerful, beautiful women existing at the same time without being at each other's throats. The story of Dickinson hating Monroe over JFK is a classic example of this manufactured drama. The real enemy wasn't Marilyn Monroe. It was the system that insisted they had to be enemies. At number 6 on the mythical list is another Hollywood giant, Elizabeth Taylor. Unlike the Monroe rumor, this supposed feud isn't about a man. Instead, it represents a different kind of conflict, the clash of professional brands, and the quiet, unending competition for the spotlight. There's no real evidence that Angie Dickinson and Elizabeth Taylor disliked each other. But to understand why Taylor's name would end up on a fake list of rivals, you have to understand old Hollywood. During their heydays, Dickinson and Taylor moved in different but sometimes overlapping circles. Taylor was Hollywood royalty, a child star who became one of the most bankable actresses of her generation, famous for epic dramas and an even more epic love life. Dickinson, meanwhile, carved out her own niche as the cool, smart, and often dangerous woman in crime thrillers and westerns. She was the thinking man's sex symbol, a label that intentionally set her apart from the more dramatic, publicly emotional image of stars like Taylor. The rumored bad blood is really just a story of opposites. Taylor's career was all high. Drama, both on and off screen. Her roles were grand, her romances were legendary, and her scandals were front-page news. Dickinson's brand was all about control, wit, and subtlety. While Taylor was making headlines with Cleopatra, Dickinson was making her mark in stylish thrillers like Point Blank. The press loved this kind of contrast. If Taylor was fire, Dickinson was ice. This dynamic was the perfect breeding ground for feud rumors. In an industry that constantly ranked and compared its female stars, it was easy to invent a silent rivalry. Were they up for the same roles? Probably not, given their different styles. But they were absolutely competing for the same things: media attention, audience love, and industry power. Every magazine cover about Taylor's latest marriage was one that wasn't about Dickinson's latest film. The studio system practically encouraged this, playing stars against each other to keep the public hooked. The real story here isn't a personal grudge. It's about the professional reality of the time. In the kingdom of Hollywood, the press was all too happy to narrate an imaginary war for the crown. The fifth name, supposedly on Angie's secret list, is the Italian icon Sophia Loren. With this one, the story of the rivalry shifts again. It wasn't about a shared lover or a direct acting clash, but about a battle of brands in the global celebrity market. The rumored friction between Dickinson and Loren was all about the all-American sex symbol versus the wave of exotic European bombshells taking over Hollywood. Angie Dickinson, born in North Dakota, built a brand that was distinctly American. Even when playing a femme fatale, she had a down-to-earth quality that made her feel both glamorous and relatable. She was the homegrown beauty. Sophia Loren, on the other hand, represented something totally new and different. She was a symbol of a passionate, fiery European femininity that was thrilling and a little foreign to American audiences. The studios, always clever marketers, knew exactly how to play this up. They framed it as a fierce but friendly competition. Who was the ultimate bombshell? The cool, blonde American or the smoldering brunette Italian? This made-up rivalry was great for business. It gave the press juicy headlines, gave the studios a great marketing angle, and kept both actresses in the public eye. There's no record of Dickinson or Loren ever saying a bad word about each other. Their paths didn't cross much professionally, and they lived separate lives. Still, the myth of a feud stuck because it tapped into this bigger cultural story. For an actress like Dickinson, the arrival of international stars like Loren meant a new kind of competition. It wasn't just about being the top actress at your studio anymore. It was about competing with a global ideal of glamour. This rumor also shows the incredibly narrow boxes Hollywood built for its female stars. You could be the American bombshell or the European bombshell, but the system implied you couldn't. Both rule the same turf. It created an environment where women were positioned as natural adversaries. The idea of Dickinson hating Lauren is a huge oversimplification. It's more likely that Dickinson, a sharp and savvy woman, saw this new wave of international talent not as a personal attack, but as just another hurdle to clear in the wild ride of Hollywood. Coming in at number 4 on this mythical list is Natalie Wood, and her name on it is maybe the most telling of all. Unlike the others, there's no juicy, gossip-fueled story here, no rumored love triangle, no obvious career overlap, and no big clash of public images. The feud between Angie Dickinson and Natalie Wood seems to be a complete fabrication, a ghost conjured out of thin air. And that's exactly what makes it so important. The total lack of any real conflict between them shows just how insidious the Hollywood gossip mill was. Both women were working in the late 1950s and early 60s, a time when the old studio system was starting to crumble. They surely moved in the same circles and knew the same people. Natalie Wood, a former child star, was fighting to be seen as a serious, dramatic actress, a struggle Dickinson, who also wanted to be known for more than just her looks, could have certainly understood. So why would Wood's name ever get attached to a hate list? The answer might be as simple as professional jealousy, twisted and blown up by the rumor mill. Maybe they were up for the same part once. Or maybe a journalist on a deadline just decided to invent a rivalry because they were both beautiful, talented, and famous. When there's no real scandal, the gossip machine just makes one up. This is the most baseless and damaging part of the industry's habit of pitting women against each other. It suggests that even without a reason, the default assumption was conflict. It shows a system where women's relationships were presumed to be full of cattiness and jealousy, not friendship and respect. The myth of a Dickinson-Wood feud is a powerful reminder that in old Hollywood, a woman didn't have to do anything to be seen as a rival. She just had to be successful next to another successful woman. It's a phantom feud that tells us a lot more about the storytellers than it does about the women themselves. We're about to get into the most shocking names on this list. Where the rumors touch on secrets, Hollywood fought for decades to keep buried. The stories from here on out challenge the whole idea of the hate list and uncover a truth that's far more tragic than simple rivalry. If you're finding this trip into Hollywood's hidden history interesting, take a second to subscribe to our channel and hit that like button. You won't want to miss what's next because the truth behind the biggest names on this list changes everything. Now we get to the name that shatters the whole idea of the hate list and reveals the real, often tragic, truth behind the gossip. Coming in at number 3 is not a rival, but a person of huge and secret importance in Angie Dickinson's life, the legendary Barbara Stanwyck. The rumor of hate here is a cruel flip of the truth. According to persistent, long-standing, but unproven reports, the emotion that defined their relationship wasn't hate. It was a deep, hidden love. The story of Angie Dickinson and Barbara Stanwyck, as told by Hollywood lore, is one of a secret, same-sex romance in an era when that kind of relationship was professionally and socially unthinkable. Stanwyck was a Hollywood giant, 22 years older than Angie, an icon known for her strength and power. After her famous divorce from actor Robert Taylor, Stanwyck's private life became intensely guarded, which only fueled speculation. In the oppressive 1950s, where morality clauses in studio contracts could kill a career overnight, a public lesbian relationship was out of the question. According to these unconfirmed stories, their connection began in the mid-1950s at private Hollywood parties. Insiders whispered about their closeness. One tale even circulated about a photographer who supposedly saw an intimate moment between them. A picture that was never published, but became part of the whispered legend. If true, Theirs was a love that had to live in the shadows, always under the threat of being exposed and ruined. This is where you see the true cruelty of the Hollywood machine. The same system that would have forced them into secrecy is the one that would later twist their story into a fiction of hatred. Why would a rumor of a hate list be easier to swallow than a story of love? Because a feud between two actresses, no matter how fake, fits the industry's narrative of catfighting women. A genuine, loving relationship between two women, however, challenged the entire power structure. It was a truth too dangerous to tell, so it was buried and replaced with a more convenient lie. If the rumors were true, the pressure on both women would have been immense. A close friend of Angie's reportedly said that Dickinson felt she couldn't breathe under all the pressure. This wasn't the drama of a love triangle. It was the suffocating weight of a world that refused to accept them. The story of Angie Dickinson and Barbara Stanwyck isn't about a feud. It's a potential tragedy of forbidden love and a testament to the courage it might have taken to love at all in such an intolerant time. The fact that this rumored love story could be twisted by gossip into a tale of hatred is maybe the most damning indictment of old Hollywood there is. The second name on this mythical list is Joan Crawford, a star who was the living embodiment of the old studio system. A feud with Crawford wouldn't have been about a man or a movie role, but about a clash of generations. It symbolized Dickinson's struggle against the very system that Crawford had mastered. While there's no proof of personal hatred, putting Crawford on this list represents a rebellion against the oppressive machinery of old Hollywood. Joan Crawford's career was forged at the peak of the studio system. She knew its rules better than anyone and followed them religiously. The strict demands on appearance, the constant publicity, and the unwavering loyalty to the studio. Her entire life was a meticulously crafted performance, but by the time Angie Dickinson became a star in the late 1950s, that system was starting to show its cracks. A new generation of actors was coming up, and they wanted more independence. Dickinson was part of this new wave. While she was a product of the system, in some ways, the blonde hair, the sex symbol label, she also had a modern intelligence that didn't quite fit the old mold. Her on-screen persona was less about dramatic suffering and more about cool, modern strength. A conflict with someone like Joan Crawford would have been symbolic of the old guard versus the new breed. Crawford represented an era of total studio control, where actors were often treated like property. The rumored tension could also come from the different expectations for actresses of their time. Crawford's generation was expected to be eternally grateful, to play nice with the press, and to maintain a flawless public image. Dickinson, on the other hand, brought a witty, intellectual energy to her roles. She was nobody's property. Putting Joan Crawford on a hate list is a symbolic act of rebellion. It isn't about hating the woman herself, but hating what she stood for, the iron fist of the studio system. It's about rejecting the idea that an actress's worth was tied to how well she could be controlled. The phantom feud between Dickinson and Crawford is a story about the changing of the guard and about the fight for freedom in an industry built on obedience, and now we've arrived at the #1 spot on the mythical hate list. This is where the legend completely falls apart, revealing a truth that's so much more complex, painful, and human than any made-up feud. The final name isn't an actress at all. It's the man Angie Dickinson herself has called the love of my life. Frank Sinatra. The idea that she hated him is the biggest misunderstanding of all, a dark reflection of a relationship so intense it could easily be mistaken for war. Their connection was the stuff of legend, an on-again, off-again affair. That lasted for decades. She was a trusted confidant in his world, the poker-playing mascot of the Rat Pack's inner circle. He was, in her words, magic, a man who was at once difficult, wonderful, brave, and foolish. They were so close that in 1964 they almost got married. So why would a love this deep ever get twisted into a story of hate? Because their relationship was also filled with pain and a power imbalance that speaks to the darkest side of old Hollywood. Angie ultimately said no to marrying him. She wasn't a fan of his wild, all-night lifestyle, and as she put it, she simply did not want to say no to Frank Sinatra. In a move that must have stung, he also reportedly told her he would never marry another actress, only to later marry Mia Farrow. But the hate in this story is the ghost of a deep and complicated heartbreak. It's the pain of a love that was all-consuming but ultimately impossible. It's the frustration of being with a man who held all the cards in a town where he made the rules. Angie's love for Sinatra was real. She still smiles when she talks about him. But the world that love existed in was toxic. The power imbalance was huge. Her feelings were likely a messy tangle of genuine adoration, deep frustration, and the painful knowledge that the man she loved was also a product of a brutal, patriarchal system. The myth of hating Sinatra is just a simple word for a decade-spanning emotional epic, full of love, regret, and the kind of heartbreak that only comes from a connection that was as magical as it was unsustainable. So, let's go back to our original question. Did Angie Dickinson really have a secret list of 7 people she hated? Based on all the credible evidence, the answer is no. The list is a myth, a piece of Hollywood folklore built from half-truths, manufactured rivalries, and the industry's endless hunger for female conflict. What we found instead is something much more real. Behind the rumored feud with Marilyn, Monroe was a studio system that pitted its bombshells against each other. Behind the whispers about Elizabeth Taylor and Sophia Loren was a media that needed to create drama. And in the phantom feud with Natalie Wood, we saw how gossip could be created out of nothing. And then, the myth completely fell apart. In place of hate for Barbara Stanwyck, we found persistent rumors of a courageous, hidden love. In the symbolic clash with Joan Crawford, we saw a rebellion against the studio system itself. And finally, with Frank Sinatra, the idea of simple hate dissolved into the complicated reality of the most significant and heartbreaking love of her life, the furry eye.